Hello, everyone. I'm Leslie Rohde with AskTheLawyers.com, and welcome to another episode of Ask the Lawyer. The oil and gas extraction industry is one of the most dangerous in the country. In fact, according to government statistics, workers in that industry are up to 7 times more likely to die on the job than other workers. So what do you do if you're injured in an oil field accident? Well, we're fortunate to have Grant Lawson with us today. He's an attorney with the Metier Law Firm in Casper, Wyoming. Grant, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So what does someone do if he or she is involved in an oil field accident?
Well, it's an important question. A lot of times, an employee who's hurt out in the oil field won't know how to react or what to do. Sometimes they're so injured that they won't have any choices in what they can do because they're being life-flighted to a hospital or they're in critical care for some time. But it's incredibly critical that when you're hurt, that you reach out to an attorney to find out whether or not the evidence at the scene can be preserved, that you're not being misled into giving statements to people that you shouldn't be talking to make sure that your workers' compensation, if it applies, if you have it, is being properly applied for and filled out. Notifications are being given to law enforcement, including OSHA, or the state applicable agency that's going to do any sort of investigation. There's a lot of steps that have to be followed to make sure that you're protecting yourself, protecting your interests, your claims, and what happens from there forward to make sure that you're protected.
So calling that attorney, first thing on the mind, right? You mentioned workers' comp. So if you get workers' comp, does somebody still have a legal claim after that?
So it's completely dependent on the situation. A lot of times out in the oil field, there's products that can fail. And there's things that happen that are caused by the fault of people who are not essentially your employees or co-employees or your supervisors. There may be other parties. That's the unique thing about the oil field, is that there's a lot of different parties involved with an operation. From a drilling operation to a completions part, there's different contractors and different teams that are doing things. And if someone doesn't do their job right, it can lead to disaster for somebody who doesn't even work on the same team or the same employer. And so workers' comp doesn't necessarily mean you do not have legal rights to get all of the damages you've suffered from another party, so to speak, other than your employer or potentially your co-employees, if their conduct was such that it went beyond mere negligence.
I'm sure there are many different types of injuries that can happen in this industry out there on an oil rig. What if someone is exposed to chemicals out there? Do they have a case?
Yeah, absolutely. There are strict guidelines and restrictions and company policies and regulations out there that require personal protective equipment, but also gas monitors, doing safety meetings, which are sometimes called tailgate meetings, or JSA's, job safety analysis. There's all sorts of precautions that are supposed to be followed in order to prevent these types of chemical exposure injuries from happening, or chemical burns or explosions, things that happen as a result of a failure to either follow policies, have proper equipment, have testing done, and following the rules. And so, yes, 100%, if somebody is exposed to chemicals and they are injured, they can potentially have a serious legal claim.
I know you have a lot of expertise and experience in this area. It has to be hard when someone has been involved in one of these accidents and just can't work anymore. So now you've got the problem of you can't even get paid for working. What do you do in that case?
Yeah, the oil field is an incredibly dangerous place, and injuries range from, fingers getting hurt to, unfortunately, death. And so in that context, when somebody is really injured and injured beyond the ability to work again, it's critical that they are looking into their legal interest to find out how they are going to provide for themselves and their family for the future. And workers' comp, unfortunately, in many states, doesn't cut it. There's a limited amount of the resources available to provide help for somebody after they've been hurt on the job through workers' comp. and people are facing serious bills, serious future limitations on their ability to provide for themselves and their families. So in that context, there is absolutely the need to talk with an attorney to find out, hey, what am I going to do? Do I have any ability to help myself for the future and my family?
Life-changing stuff, that is for sure. When they call you, I'm sure they have questions like, so what is a case like this worth financially? How could it help me?
And that's completely dependent on the situation. When we look at that, you have to understand that there's medical bills. You have medical bills up until the time you have a lawsuit come to fruition or come to court, so to speak. You're going to have medical bills that go into the future. You're going to have lost wages, what you weren't able to do and what you're not able to do in the future. And then you have all of your disfigurement, disability, loss of enjoyment of life, pain and suffering, and other damages that all go into the mix of whether how much of a claim, what your claim is worth. And so it's not an easy question. And so for anybody who tries to give a willy-nilly answer to that, isn't doing any justice to a potential client, because you really have to understand the severity of somebody's situation and the severity of the medical condition and the lost ability to work in the future, and really get into the person's life to figure out how they've been affected, how this has changed their life and their family's life, to really be able to tell that story and know that story, so that you can figure out the true damages, the amount of money the case is worth.
I can tell that putting myself in hands of someone like you who's done this and has been through this would be the place to go. That is for sure. But I know folks watching this might be a little bit worried about the cost of all of this. How much can I afford an attorney, especially if I've been through something this heartbreaking?
Well, thanks for asking that question, and that is a really important point. We work, lawyers like myself and my firm and others who specialize in personal injury, catastrophic injury, wrongful death cases. We work upon contingency, which means that we are fronting the costs and expenses to run the case in hopes that there's going to be a successful outcome in that time. And if there is, then we get paid back our costs. But the last thing that somebody who's severely injured should have to worry about is, how do they pay for an attorney? How am I going to get this attorney, and how am I going to afford them to go after my legal rights? That is something that we put aside, and we take care of those things. We sign them up, and all we want them to focus on is their health and getting better and focusing on the future and how to move on from what they've been through, while we prosecute the case. So that's the great thing about what we do. There's a lot of risk, but it's also a huge benefit to the client.
That does provide some relief. Any takeaways that you would like people to know, Grant, if they've been involved in something like this, or perhaps if they know someone who has been involved?
Yeah, here's one takeaway. I continue to be shocked by the number of people who call me who have been misled or told by their employers, well, hey, listen, I don't want to report this injury claim because it may go against our safety records, or it may cause our workers' compensation rates to go up. That's illegal. That's against the law, and it's just flat out wrong. If you've been hurt, you absolutely deserve to find out if there's workers' compensation, to report it to the state. And in fact, there's guidelines for each state on the hours, of whether it be a day or a few days that go by within the time frame you have to report your accident or your injuries. And so sometimes these employees are out there getting hurt, and they're getting talked into holding off on reporting their claim, or filing it under their own medical insurance and those sort of things. And that is wrong. And I want people to know that absolutely not. Don't do it. Call a lawyer and find out what your rights are, and make sure you're doing the right thing to protect your interests and your family. Grant
Lawson, as always, thanks so much for the advice on this topic.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
We thank all of you for watching this episode of Ask the Lawyer. I'm Leslie Rohde with AskTheLawyers.com, where you can choose a lawyer that lawyers choose.